Hey, everyone. So, have you ever felt like, you know, plans can be like either set in stone or like way too vague
Yeah.
to be useful?
Yeah.
Well, today we're diving into a system that is like all about finding that sweet spot.
Okay.
That flexible and adaptable, and you're always learning from experience. So we're going to be looking at how like a global community uses a trial and error approach to tackle some pretty big challenges.
It's a fascinating model.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can think of it less like a rigid blueprint
Okay.
and more like a roadmap that is like always evolving.
Exactly. And to help guide us through all this, we've got a study guide
Okay.
that's breaking down all these messages and plans from the Universal House of Justice.
Okay.
Now, that's the governing body of the Baha'i faith.
Now, you might not be super familiar with the Baha'i faith,
Right.
but stick with us here. What's so cool about this study guide is it shows how you can put spiritual principles into action
Yeah.
in a really practical way.
Yeah. Let's get into it. So the study guide really stresses that this whole thing isn't about blindly following orders.
Right.
It's about reflective action.
Right. It's more like running a science experiment.
Okay.
You like try things out, you see what happens,
Yeah.
you analyze the results,
Yeah.
and then you tweak your approach, to make it even better.
So say you're trying to like get more young people engaged.
Okay.
In your community, you might start with an idea that works great like in a rural area.
Yeah.
But then you need to like adjust it
Right.
for your busy city.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the study guide actually quotes something called the Ridvan Message of 1996.
Okay.
So every year, the Universal House of Justice releases a message to the global Baha'i community, kind of like a State of the Union.
Yeah.
And in this one, they said, every new development becomes a source of learning for the community. The process is dynamic and evolutionary.
I like that.
Yeah.
Dynamic and evolutionary. So basically every success, every hiccup along the way
Right.
becomes valuable data,
Yeah.
and you're always learning, evolving your approach. I feel like that's something we could all use a bit more of.
Definitely. And the study guide doesn't just talk about this in theory. It gets into how communities actually put this into practice.
Yeah.
They use feedback loops and have these reflection gatherings.
Hold on, reflection gatherings.
Yeah.
Tell me more about those.
They're actually a core part of this whole system. And imagine like getting everyone together who was involved in that youth engagement program we talked about.
Yeah.
And they discuss what worked, what didn't, and brainstorm new ideas.
So it's not just about getting feedback, it's about actively using it
Right.
to make things better. But I imagine things could get pretty chaotic with so many different communities all over the world, each doing their own thing.
That's where the global aspect comes in.
Okay.
The study guide emphasizes that this isn't just local communities like tinkering around in isolation.
Right.
There are national and international bodies that help connect the dots.
Okay. The Ridvan Message of 2016 even talks about this, saying, reflection meetings allow communities to learn from their efforts, adapt their strategies, and gain deeper insight into the spiritual dynamics at play.
So you've got this constant flow of information.
Right.
Local insights feeding into the global level and guidance coming back down to help communities refine their approaches. That's pretty neat.
It is, and it's actually quite similar to some principles you see in fields like project management and community development.
Now, that's interesting. I was wondering if there were connections to other fields. So give me an example. How does this tie into project management?
Well, think about agile methodologies,
Okay.
which are really popular in software development and other project management contexts.
Yeah.
They're all about breaking down big goals into smaller chunks. You're constantly testing and iterating
Right.
and adapting to feedback along the way.
So both approaches are about embracing change and using feedback to constantly improve.
Exactly, and they both rely on evidence-based decision-making.
It's not about following your gut feeling. It's
Yeah.
about looking at the data,
Right.
analyzing what's working,
Yeah.
and adjusting your course accordingly.
This is making a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious, how does this all connect back to the spiritual principles you mentioned earlier?
That's where it gets really powerful.
Okay.
The study guide emphasizes that this approach isn't just about achieving practical results. It's also about putting spiritual principles into action.
So it's not enough to just have a plan.
Right.
You need to approach it with the right mindset,
Yeah.
the right values.
Exactly. And the study guide quotes the Ridvan Message of 2010, stating, the collective experience of the Baha'i world community is becoming a valuable resource for humanity's advancement.
So you're saying that by applying these principles of trial and error, the reflective action, the constant learning, the collaboration, that the Baha'i community is building something that can benefit everyone, not just those within the faith.
That's exactly right.
Wow. I didn't expect to uncover all of this. It seems like this trial and error approach is way more than just a problem-solving technique.
It really is. It's a whole way of thinking, a way of approaching challenges and opportunities with a spirit of learning adaptability and collaboration.
This has definitely sparked some new ideas for me.
Good.
And I'm sure our listeners are starting to think about how they could apply this in their own lives.
Yeah.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves...
All right, let's unpack this a bit more. We've covered a lot of ground already.
We have. But there's so much more to explore. Let's continue our deep dive in the next episode, where we'll look at some real-world examples of how this trial and error method is being put into action. So stay tuned.
Welcome back.
Yeah, I'm excited to keep going with this trial and error approach. It's really made me think differently about tackling challenges.
You know, in the last part, we touched on how this method connects to spiritual principles.
Right.
Well, the study guide actually goes deeper into that. It highlights how the Baha'i faith views its plans, not just as like religious directives, but as full-blown socioeconomic projects.
Oh, that's fascinating. So it's not just about like your personal spiritual growth.
Yeah.
It's about using these principles to like create positive change in the real world.
Exactly. It elevates these plans beyond just words.
Yeah.
It's about putting faith into action to transform society.
And we talked about how it's not a top-down dictatorial kind of thing.
Right.
The study guide really emphasized that, right?
Absolutely. One of the core principles is empowering communities to take ownership.
Yeah.
It's about fostering a sense of agency where individuals at all levels can contribute to shaping the outcome.
So instead of just passively following instructions, people are encouraged to think critically.
Yeah.
To experiment.
Right.
To find solutions that work best for their own circumstances.
That's the beauty of it. It's this beautiful blend of practical action and spiritual values. It's what the study guide refers to as practical spirituality.
Oh, okay.
Principles like unity, consultation, and justice are woven into the very fabric of these plans.
So it's not just about feeling good or having good intentions. It's about doing good in a way that's like tangible and impactful.
Precisely. And what's even more exciting is that the Baha'i community, through this systematic learn-as-you-go approach, is creating models of social transformation that have the potential to benefit all of humanity.
It's like they're pioneering new ways of thinking and acting. And then the insights they gain can be shared and adapted by others who are also working towards a better world.
Exactly. The study guide even quotes the Ridvan message of 2010 saying, "The collective experience of the Baha'i world community is becoming a valuable resource for humanity's advancement."
That's a bold statement. But honestly, after everything we've discussed, it makes sense. This method of testing, reflecting, and refining could be a game changer for like tackling the complex issues.
It really could.
Facing our world.
It's about moving beyond endless theoretical debates and actually getting your hands dirty.
Yeah.
Trying things out in the real world, seeing what sticks, and constantly improving based on real experience.
And because this approach is rooted in those spiritual principles we talked about, it brings a whole different dimension to the table. It's not just about achieving material progress, just for the sake of progress.
Right. It recognizes that true well-being encompasses both material and spiritual aspects.
Yeah.
It's about creating a society that's not only prosperous, but also just compassionate and sustainable.
That's a vision I think we can all get behind. And this trial and error approach, with its emphasis on learning, adaptation, and collaboration, gives us a practical framework.
It really does.
To pursue this holistic vision of progress.
It's a model that encourages humility, resilience, and a willingness to learn from our mistakes. And it invites us to embrace uncertainty as a natural part of growth and development, both individually and collectively.
Yeah, it's such a refreshing contrast to the like rigid ideologies and top-down solutions that we so often see. This is about empowering people to take ownership, to be creative, to learn from each other, and to like build a better future together.
And because it's grounded in these spiritual principles of unity and collaboration, it helps to create a strong sense of shared purpose. It's about working together not as like competing individuals or factions, but as members of one human family striving to build a better world for all.
I love that image of one human family. It's really powerful. It reminds us that despite all our differences, we're all interconnected.
Yeah.
And that our collective well-being is ultimately inseparable.
Absolutely. And This trial and error approach provides a practical way to navigate the complexities of our interconnected world. It encourages us to experiment, to learn from our mistakes, and to constantly adapt our strategies based on real-world experience and feedback.
So it's about acknowledging that we don't have all the answers and that the best solutions often emerge through a process of collaborative exploration and experimentation.
And it's about embracing uncertainty as a natural part of the journey of progress, fostering a culture of learning and innovation where setbacks are seen as opportunities for growth rather than as defeats.
It really flips the script on how we view failure.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? It encourages us to see mistakes not as something to be ashamed of, but as valuable learning experiences that can help us to improve and grow.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a growth mindset where we're constantly seeking to learn and evolve, embracing challenges as opportunities for development.
You know, that reminds me of something I read about the concept of progressive revelation in the Baha'i faith. From what I understand, it suggests that spiritual truth is not static or absolute.
Yeah, right.
But rather unfolds gradually over time, adapting to the evolving needs and capacities of humanity.
That's a great connection. That concept is a key part of the Baha'i teachings.
Yeah.
And it's reflected in the way their plans are designed to evolve and adapt over time.
So it's not about clinging to a rigid set of doctrines.
Right.
It's about embracing a dynamic and evolving understanding of truth as we learn and grow.
Precisely. And this aligns perfectly with the trial and error approach. It acknowledges that our understanding of how to build a just and flourishing society is also constantly evolving.
So we need to be open to new ideas.
Yeah.
To learn from our mistakes. And to continuously strive for improvement, both individually and collectively.
Exactly. And by grounding this process in those spiritual principles we've been discussing, it gives our efforts a sense of purpose that transcends purely material goals.
It's about recognizing that our individual and collective well-being are deeply interconnected, and that true progress encompasses not just material advancement, but also spiritual growth, social transformation, and the development of our full human potential.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And I think it leads perfectly into the next part of our exploration, where we'll be looking at some real-world examples of this trial and error method in action. Stay tuned.
All right, so welcome back to the deep dive. It's really amazing how much ground we've covered.
I know, right?
Exploring this whole trial and error approach.
We've gone from like broad concepts to the nitty-gritty of how this approach works in real life.
And speaking of real life, I'm really curious to see how this all plays out.
Yeah.
In actual communities. In the last part, we talked about how the Baha'i faith sees its plans as these evolving blueprints for social change.
It's not about imposing a one-size-fits-all solution, but rather about providing a flexible framework that communities can adapt to their own needs.
All right, you mentioned earlier that this system relies heavily on feedback and reflection.
It does.
Does the study guide give any specific examples of how that works?
It does. Remember those reflection gatherings we talked about.
Yeah.
They're a key part of this whole process. The study guide describes how the Baha'i community uses these gatherings to create a space for shared learning and continuous improvement.
So imagine a group of people who've been working on a project to, improve literacy rates in their neighborhood.
Right.
They might come together to discuss what's been working well, what challenges they've faced, and brainstorm new ideas.
Yeah, exactly. It's a chance to step back, analyze their experiences, and make adjustments based on real-world evidence and feedback. And this process isn't limited to just individual projects. These reflection gatherings happen at all levels of the Baha'i community, from the neighborhood level all the way up to the national and international levels.
So it's like a multi-layered system of feedback loops.
Right.
Where insights and lessons learned are constantly flowing back and forth, helping everyone learn and adapt more effectively.
Precisely. And this interconnectedness is crucial because it ensures that knowledge isn't siloed. A successful approach developed in one community can be shared with others, adapted and refined based on new experiences, and ultimately contribute to a growing body of collective wisdom.
It reminds me of open source software development.
Yeah.
Where programmers from all over the world are contributing to a shared code base, constantly improving and building upon each other's work.
Right.
Except here, it's not about lines of code, but about strategies for social change.
That's a great analogy. And this collaborative approach is particularly important in today's world, which is facing increasingly complex and interconnected challenges.
Exactly. Think about issues like climate change.
Right.
Or poverty. They require global cooperation.
Yeah.
And a willingness to experiment, to learn from each other and to adapt our approaches based on new information
Absolutely.
and experiences.
And this trial and error mindset encourages us to view challenges not as insurmountable obstacles,
Right. but as opportunities for learning and growth.
It's about embracing a spirit of continuous improvement, recognizing that we don't have all the answers up front, and that the best way to find solutions is to be willing to experiment, to learn from our mistakes, and to adapt our approaches based on real-world evidence.
And by grounding this process in those spiritual principles we discussed earlier, unity, justice, collaboration, it elevates these efforts beyond just practical problem solving. It becomes a journey of collective growth and transformation.
So it's not just about fixing problems, it's about creating a better world for everyone, a world that reflects our highest values and aspirations.
Exactly. And what's so exciting is that this approach isn't exclusive to the Baha'i community.
Right.
Anyone can adopt this mindset of trial and error, regardless of their background or beliefs.
So whether you're working on community development projects, leading a team at work, or even just trying to improve your own life, this approach offers a powerful framework for navigating complexity and achieving lasting results. It's about embracing uncertainty as a natural part of growth, cultivating a spirit of continuous learning, and fostering a culture of collaboration where everyone feels empowered to contribute their unique talents and perspectives.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's worth emphasizing one key takeaway. Progress isn't a linear path.
Right.
It's a winding road filled with twists and turns, setbacks, and unexpected discoveries.
It's a journey that requires us to be adaptable, resilient, and above all, open to learning from our experiences, both the successes and the failures, because it's often through our mistakes that we gain the most valuable insights.
And by embracing this trial and error mindset, we not only increase our chances of success, but we also enrich the journey itself, transforming it into a process of collective learning, growth, and transformation.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration has sparked some new ideas and inspired you to embrace a more experimental, learning-oriented approach to the challenges and opportunities you face in your own life.
And remember, the journey of progress is a collective one. Let's keep learning from each other, supporting each other's efforts, and working together to create a brighter future for all